Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Betsy. Hello, Betsy.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
So good. And everyone knows we've been talking for a few minutes now. And I just admitted that my eye has been twitching for a few weeks now. So that's how I am.
Oh,
Everything's fine. Thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift podcast. It's been a journey that I never knew I needed. And I'm so grateful that I get to talk to people like yourself, just like basically strangers that I've never met, and hear these stories of how a moment in time changed them and how they were. For anyone that's listening for the first time, because you're on the Life Shift podcast, it exists because when I was 8, my mom was killed in a motorcycle accident, and my parents lived states apart, and I lived with my mom full time. And when she died, everything in my life changed. I had to move to a new state. I had to start a new school. I had to live with a parent that I didn't normally live with. Everything changed. And it was like the late 80s, early 90s. So people weren't really talking about how to help a kid grieve and how to move through life with a dead parent. And I assumed that everyone wanted to see me happy. So I just pushed that aside. But all that time, I always wondered, do other people in this world have like these moments in time where everything changes? As an adult, now I know people have lots of them. But, it was really something that stuck out to me. And now I've had this just opportunity to talk to people about these and how, whether it's an external force like what I experienced or an internal fire, and how we can change as people, and we can reflect on these moments with maybe some weird gratitude or some kind of like, it was terrible, but look at all the things that I've learned about myself because of it. And so it's just been such an unexpected but fulfilling journey. So thank you for being a part of it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
The human story is so powerful. And I'm sure you understand this from your own life. It's just like, you never know who's out there listening right now that is going through something, or they feel alone in the way that they're feeling about something. And then something that you're going to share on your story is going to click with them, and they're going to feel less alone. They're going to feel inspired to move through life in a different way. So I just, so grateful. So anyway, thank you. I'm just going to keep going on and on. Maybe to start us off, maybe in the first, before we get into your story, you can tell us who you are in 2024. Like, give us the vibe of Betsy right now.
I am a wanderer,
Okay.
a seeker, somebody who is just insanely curious about life and people. To make a living and to pay my bills, I am a broker of real estate.
Okay.
But I don't define myself by that.
Yeah. Is this, I guess we'll hear in your story, but this wonder, have you always been someone so curious about other people and their stories, or is this a newer part of your journey?
Actually, no, I do feel like I've always subconsciously been curious, but I definitely think it's something now I am much more aware of, embrace, and seek out than before.
Yeah. Do you think that some of that was like society driven? And I ask that because I often talk to people about how I felt so much of my life was like this checklist. Like, I did the things that I thought everyone expected me to do in the order that they expected me to do. And therefore there wasn't that space for curiosity in my sense of like asking people questions outside the norm. Like, you could ask people, how are you? What do you do for a living? Like, don't ask them these other questions. Right. Do you feel that any of that was driven in your life?
Yeah, actually, that's interesting you said that. Yes, very much so. Because I felt like I had two pivots in my life. I'm going to talk about this later. But the second one, definitely, in the last like 7 years of my life, it's been talking about and reflecting on all the boxes I checked that I thought I was supposed to check to be successful and thus happy. And I was successful, but not thus happy. So
yes. And I think there's a lot of people that probably feel that way. I think you're like, okay, well, it wasn't this box. It's the next box that I'm going to find the happiness, right? And then you check that one. You don't spend any time celebrating that box you just checked. You move to the next box. You're like, it's going to be this one. I know that feeling all too well. It was very much my life for so long. And then certain things happened in my life and I was like, nobody cares. Yes. Like, not a person cares besides me. And here I am doing all these things so other people will care. Yes. So I think that's very common. And I think, maybe we learn from those
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way, right? So I'll let you paint the picture of your life leading up to this first pivotal moment, the second one, however you want to go. This is your story to tell and how far back you want to go.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe you can paint the picture of who you were before.
So I was born in a family. I've got a twin sister and I have an older sister, identical twin sister and an older sister, and grew up in a home where high expectations, which I appreciate, very, very structured and very clear as to what we were supposed to do and not do. And there was definitely a pressure on me and my sisters to become physicians because that is what my father is, and that's what I grew up in that environment. I grew up, we all did, going to the hospital with him, working for his colleagues before we could even get a minimum wage job. We were all pre-med at college. My older sister and my twin sister graduated from the college and then went to the school that my dad is teaching at and is an academic physician at. And so I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to do that. And I didn't do that though. I, at least at the time, just said, I can't do it. It's not me. It's not in me.
Good.
So I went to business school like you and got my MBA. And you're right. At 23, I did go to school. I did work for 2 years and then went back.
Oh, well, that was better than I did.
Yeah, I think I was 24 when I graduated. And I spent a decade in the pharmaceutical industry, straddling that healthcare pull that I was feeling. And it was funny because I liked everything about my job except for my job. I liked the people in my job. I liked the fact that it was literally, for most of that time, it was within a mile of my home. I liked, honestly, the income. I liked that for the most part, I didn't have to take home work at night. The travel was interesting, but the actual job I didn't like. But I thought, okay, you don't get everything in life.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
Yeah. And you checked a box, I'm sure, from the outside looking in. Everyone's like, ooh, good job.
Right.
All the success. She must be so happy.
Absolutely. And I was advancing up the corporate ladder. And I was 32 and I had 2 daughters. They were 1 and 2 years old. I had married my childhood sweetheart. And I grew up in Florida, but we were living in Philadelphia. And within a very short period of time, I found myself suddenly single and laid off. And at the time in my life, I think of it as I was sitting on a 3-legged stool. My pillars in my life were my marriage, my career, and my children. And 2 of those legs, release themselves from me. And when you're sitting on a 3-legged stool and 2 legs go out, you land on the floor. And I did. And it took me, I moved back home. And when I say that to people, they assume, oh yeah, she moved back to Florida. No, I moved back into my childhood bedroom and my girls moved into what were previously my sister's bedrooms growing up to just figure out a plan.
Yeah. Was that a welcome feeling from or was that a sense of defeat for you? Like, how did you feel? Were you like, okay, I'm going to go back there and recuperate in a way? Or was it like, I have failed?
No, it wasn't. I definitely felt like I had failed in my marriage because I don't come from generations of divorce at all. We're Catholics. We were taught, you don't get divorced unless it's just, just awful.
Right.
I never envisioned that as a part of my life plan.
I hope no one envisions that. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so. No, I don't mean to put any pressure on you to feel like that. I'm just curious if we internalize those things because you had the boxes checked.
Right. And I did feel, getting laid off, that was definitely traumatic, even though I should have seen it coming because they laid off the entire division. I was working at the time for a biotech company, which was a 1-product company. The product did not get FDA approval. And I was working in marketing. we had nothing to market.
Right.
But I just thought, they'll go back through trials. We'll try again. They just disband the whole commercial division.
Do you internalize that? Did you I feel like I would be like, oh, what did I do? But looking back, it's like, clearly it wasn't you.
It wasn't me, but the part of me was like thinking, gosh, if I was good enough, they would have found a role for me.
Right. Yeah. Because you
But
had been
now,
moving through your career.
yeah, but now I'm totally fine. But
Yeah.
it was a rocky couple of years for me emotionally getting my stability back. But I did vow I will never find myself with those few life pillars. Now I constantly and very consciously have 6 to 8 life pillars that are front
Wow.
and center that I work on a regular basis. I have goals. They are constant in my life. So if any one, even 2 pillars go out, I'm still standing.
You kind of
So
created this like life protection, life preserver type
yeah,
situation for yourself to feel
yeah.
safe again.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not really taught that, how to build a life. I think that would be such a there's so many skills that I think are so critical to a fulfilling life that we totally miss out on in our educational system. How to get along with people, how to manage money, and and truly how to build a solid foundation for your life.
Yeah.
Those to me are much more critical than calculus. I mean,
What, you don't use calculus every day?
I don't. So anyway, but looking back, now that was 22 years ago, 23 years ago, best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm.
The best, because I am such a different person than I ever would have been. And my girls grew up with a much different mom than I would have been. And that I think has truly benefited them. Fortunately, they were so young, they don't remember a time when we were together. So there was not a traumatic, at least it didn't seem to be. And I don't feel it. They never knew us together.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were, 10, 11, 12. And like very traumatic having one parent exit.
Yeah.
So they never had that. So that in that sense, I was lucky. And I really do feel blessed that they could see an independent, strong, strong
Yeah.
ethic mom as what they saw. So that was great.
And building the life that you wanted this time.
Oh yeah, building the life I wanted, and I've been very blessed. I came back here to Gainesville. Always wanted to raise my children in my hometown, and didn't think it was going to be in those circumstances. But you got to be careful what you wish for,
Fair.
So got to raise my girls. They're 26 and 25. I now have a wonderful, thriving. I have a real estate brokerage. I have a property management company. I have a title company. I have a real estate school, and I have a wonderful nonprofit that is near and dear to my heart, which provides affordable housing to cost burdened families in our counties, North Central Florida. So it's just blossomed and really feel fulfilled. Never feel like I work a day in my life. But my second pivot happened. So I'm 55, and it happened in my mid to late 40s when I was truly, like you had said, felt like I had checked off all the boxes on what was supposed to be successful and happy in building this life. But if I was honest with myself, I wasn't happy. Yes, I was successful, but deep
Were
down.
you doing all these things that you were just describing, like some of these businesses? This is
Mhm,
where you were in this
mhm,
space?
mhm. At that time I had everything but the nonprofit.
Okay.
And so it took me a year to even admit it to myself, because I thought, you see so much outside of I see so much outside of my bubble of people who have so much less and they're so worse off than me. So I didn't feel that I even had the right to verbalize or admit that I wasn't happy.
But you do.
What?
But you do.
But I do, right. And
Yeah.
so after I admitted that to myself, I started reading incessantly. I've always been into meditation and yoga, and I did that on a more regular basis. I went to therapy for the first time in my life. I did bioenergetics work. I did EMDR, just a whole host of modalities. And what I found as a common thread was the reason I was unhappy was because I felt like I was confined by these boxes that I was in. And the boxes that I were in were because of either my role, as a mom, as a single mom, as a working mom, at one time a wife, a daughter, like being the good daughter. What does that mean? And also my industry, my gender, boxes that I felt and perhaps my peers were putting me in, my family of origin put me in. So almost like I kind of describe it as, have you ever bought a mattress online and it arrives at your door and it's in a box like this big? And
Yes.
then you rip it open and then you wait a day or two and it expands to like a king size mattress. I felt like I was that mattress in that box, so
Mm.
depressed and wanting to break free. So I wrote this book called Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the
Oh,
Metaphorical Boxes That Bind Us. And it just came out last Monday.
oh,
But that
congrats.
journey, I know it's so interesting because we were just talking about it and you don't
I
even
know.
know that, but we were just talking about it. And so last Monday I launched this book and I wrote, people are like, why'd you write the book? Most people assume it's a lead gen book for real estate and it has nothing
Oh,
to do with real estate. But I felt so called because all of these experiences that I had when I shared them with others, others felt that way. A lot of them didn't even recognize they were in some boxes. And that's how I felt at times where, the first step to getting out of a box is being aware you're even in one.
yeah.
And so then I wrote this book on this with the hopes of just changing one person's life. They read the book, they look at something in their life a little differently and recognize that they have choices and they can extricate themselves out of boxes that no longer serve them.
Yeah. It feels like, I mean, that's the same reason I do the Life Shift podcast all the time, is because growing up, and I'm sure you can attest to this, a lot of people didn't share these stories, right?
Mhm.
Like we didn't hear
Mhm.
if a wife was unhappy
Mhm.
necessarily, unless something really crazy went on,
Yeah.
like we didn't hear those stories because people in those situations felt that, like you did, you
Mhm.
weren't allowed to feel a
Yeah.
certain way, but
Mhm.
you're human. Like we just didn't hear these stories. And so by you putting out your book, by people
Mhm.
coming on this podcast and sharing their story, there are other people out there that are finally going to go, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, I can break that box. I
Mhm.
can get out of this depression in this way. I can try EMDR, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it's just there's such a power in story. And I love that you found this space, but also like it sucks that it took so long to find that space, right? Because I'm sure you're like, oh God, if I had done this when I was 20, it's like me, my grief journey, grieving my mom was like 20 plus years. And when
Mhm.
I had the breakthrough, I was like, damn it, like I could have done this so long ago. But I mean, I guess that whole part of that journey makes all of
Mhm.
this so much richer on the other side. Do you feel that same way
Uh,
about like the
mhm.
previous version of you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the joy and you were talking earlier about how you achieve this and now that doesn't do it for you and then you achieve this and that doesn't do it for you. And that's what I found is that when you place your happiness on something external
Mm.
and something that can be taken away, it doesn't work. And so now my happiness is truly from within. I mean, I feel this tremendous joy that I hadn't felt. In fact, that's what prompted the whole thing is I was feeling unhappy. This was, about 7 years ago. And I was scrolling through the internet and I saw a picture of this. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And something drew me to this picture. This is a picture of a girl with her legs spread out, arms spread out, as wide as they can go. Favorite, one piece bathing
Was
suit.
she like five
She
or
looks like
six?
she's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And, this pure, unbridled joy face with rain coming down on her head. And across her, it says, remember her. She's still there inside you, waiting. Let's go get her. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I printed it out, sent it to a company and it's on Canvas now,
I
had
see
it, had
that.
it backed on Canvas. It sits in my office, at home, and at work. It's a screensaver on my computer and my phone. It's like, I wanted that.
Yeah.
and and I hadn't felt that in so long.
Yeah.
And so that's what started the whole journey on.
So when you saw that picture, was it a sense of like, was there like a devastation? Was there sadness? Was there anger? Like, what did
No,
you feel when you saw it?
I felt hope.
Okay.
I don't know. It felt hopeful. And then a year later, so this was in my probably mid 40s, a year or two later, we were hunkering down for a hurricane, oddly enough, because we just had one. And I always get a project for hurricanes. And the project for that one was putting photos into photo albums. I had always just accumulated photos in photo boxes. So sure enough, a couple of hours into the hurricane, lights go out. I light my candles. I get out my photo boxes and the albums, and I start putting the photos into photo albums. I finished that project and I go to empty the photo boxes into the garbage, and I could see there was a photo face down on that last box. So I pulled out the photo. I can't see it. I take it over to the candle, and I swear, Matt, it was like lightning went through me, but it wasn't from the storm outside. And I ran to my home office and put the picture I was holding up next to this picture. And I
Yeah.
looked back at the picture I'm holding, and it's a picture of a 4-year-old girl in her red striped bathing suit in the Atlantic Ocean, 3 feet in front of her father. She looks like she's trying to hug a wave that's coming to her. Her face has a smile of pure unbridled joy. And on the bottom of that photo is my mother's faded black handwriting that says Betsy, aged 4. And I thought, oh my gosh,
Wow.
I, I, I was that at one point,
Yeah.
and I lost my way. And so now I've been on a journey to get back to that. And I'm close. I do feel like I feel this on a regular basis now, when I went decades without feeling this.
Yeah. Because you were just chasing that success and
Yeah.
the happiness that society fed us, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Like, because
Yeah.
there's no list anywhere. I think we just all absorbed this, like, and we all did the same thing, right? Like, we went to college, and then we got a good job, and then we got promoted and bought a house, and
Yeah.
all these things just felt so ingrained in us.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't. I shouldn't say we. I didn't choose so many of the things in my life because I wanted to do them.
Yeah.
I didn't get the MBA because I wanted to get the MBA.
Yeah.
I got the MBA because it was the next easiest thing for me to do to be successful.
Yeah.
And a lot of mine comes from trauma, because losing my mom, I attached to perfectionism because I was afraid my dad was going to leave too. If I didn't impress him,
Oh, wow.
it wasn't that he had high standards for me, which I think he probably did, but he would never have left if I got a B,
Yeah.
But so many of the decisions that I made were out of fear that he was going to leave. And because people didn't talk about these things,
Yeah.
I just automatically assumed, like, this box, like,
Mhm.
I put myself in the box, and then I became a high school student, then I became a college student, and everything just traveled down the line, thinking the same as you did when you were like, I have all these things, but like, where is the joy? Like,
Yeah.
am I doing them because I want to?
Yeah.
And so I love that, you found this quote unquote success that the world saw in you, but at the same time, you were able to recognize that it wasn't driving the joy in you, and you had to find a way to bring all that joy back.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like a tall order.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge to do?
No, it's been fantastic. Sold the 5,000 square foot house, moved into a 1,600 square foot house. Have never been happier.
Yeah.
Never been happier.
So, like, it was just like you turn a switch kind of moment where you were able to start finding that joy, or because I feel like I had to work at it.
Well, I mean, like, switching for careers, that was huge, and that was 20 years ago.
Yep.
But more recently, the last 5 years, it's just like I just don't care anymore about what people, society, my parents think of me.
And that wasn't hard to switch to?
Hard, yeah, but what I do is, and I still sometimes it creeps in, is I feel like the only reason we stay in situations that are not good for us is either we're unaware, but if we're aware and we're still choosing to stay, then it's fear-based. And so it's either, for me, it's either fear of failure, which I truly don't believe failure exists, and that's evolved. But to me, it's a learning, it's a lesson, it's a pivot. There's failure's another box that's a mental construct that people put other people in. It doesn't exist. So I don't have fear of failure anymore, but there is fear of maybe social disconnection if I move out of a box, because people, like, even if it's not really working well, they understand the rules of the game and everyone's okay with it. So why ruffle feathers? So anytime you move out of a box, it's almost like chess, and you're changing the game.
Right.
You're going to lose something, and you're going to gain something. And are you going to be okay with that? Or the fear of social status, which that's just an ego issue. And I have learned long ago, you put the ego on the shelf and you just move forward, and that pretty much solves that issue. So I just really try to work through, if I'm feeling any kind of hesitancy, really what is driving that. And I can usually think, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario in those, walking through myself through those fears? And I can live with those worst case scenarios. So that makes the decision much easier to move towards. And the other thing, Matt, is I do it. It's a daily tracker, but I'm so, and not in a selfish way at all, but I recognize that every time I was saying yes to somebody else, I'm saying no to me. And I won't do that anymore. I don't want to come to the end of my life feeling like, and this is a common thing when they interview people who are at the end of their life, is they never lived the life they wanted. And I don't want that to be me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's big. And it's also hard. I think it's hard to get started, maybe probably not as hard once you get that ball rolling, I think, and kind of feeling what that joy actually feels like, and how choosing you first, it's not in a selfish way, but in a way that, because I think the more you live in your own truth and joy and happiness, the better all the people around you end up feeling, because it's fully you, and you're not just placating, or you're not checking a box to be something for someone else. I'm sure there's someone else out there that can actually fill that with joy, in a way. Yeah. You mentioned that you tried a lot of modalities of like different kind of therapy type things. Were any of these like pivotal in shifting that perspective? Because I would imagine not giving a crap anymore about certain things is a perspective shift for people like us, for box lovers like us.
Well, one practice I do, which helps, is I stay outside of my comfort zone. I force myself to stay outside my comfort zone. I am most comfortable outside my comfort zone. When I stay in my comfort zone too long, it gets really uncomfortable. So on a daily basis, and that's on my habit tracker, did I get outside my comfort zone today? When you start practicing that, things that used to be scary, they're just not scary anymore. But in terms of modalities, the bioenergetics work, that was incredibly, how the woman here teaches it. We go to these group sessions, and I mean, it is you are so vulnerable. And I didn't grow up in a family that was vulnerable with their feelings. In fact, we didn't talk about our feelings at all. It was when I first got into therapy, the therapist said, "Well, Betsy, how do you feel today?" I was like, "Oh, I feel pretty good." And she's like, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, sometimes I feel bad." And she's like, "Well, what else? What other feelings do you feel?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I either feel good or I feel bad. And that was the extent of my vocabulary. So then she printed out this feelings wheel, which I had never seen before. And I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like a kindergartner learning all about emotions and feelings. And because the messaging I got growing up, and I think it was probably generational, is feelings are fleeting, they're unreliable. Think, what do you think, Betsy? Not what do you feel? Look at the facts. Don't trust your emotions.
Well, your dad was in science, so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And so that's how we were raised. And so just being in tune with, because your body tells you before your mind tells you. And so now just being very acutely aware of what your body is trying to tell you. And that's what the bioenergetic work does.
Okay.
It helps you really get to that very quickly.
It's always interesting to me when someone hasn't done like this work before. Was it hard to make those decisions to try EMDR and
Yeah, the bioenergetics, it was really, that was the toughest one. One-on-one therapy was fine with me.
Sometimes that's hard for a lot of people.
I actually liked it and enjoyed being able to be that open with somebody, and somebody who has no hidden agenda. They're only trying to help you. And I also like that there's no biases. Like they don't know my dynamics. They don't know who's in my life. So I can really get a truly objective opinion.
Yeah.
Because that's hard to get, to get. But, the bioenergetics work, like one of the exercises at the very beginning, if you've never done it, highly recommend it. So you're in this room with strangers, and
I could do that.
Yeah. And you don't really talk a whole lot before the program starts. First exercise, and it was just all exercises the whole day. You spoke very little, and you stand in a circle, and there was probably 15 or 16 of us, and somebody goes in the center, and the person who's in the center stands about whatever comfortable distance, 2 to 3 feet away from one person, and you never lose eye contact with that person. And you're in the center, the other person models your breathing. So then once you guys are in sync with your breath, which are slow, deep breaths, and you do not lose eye contact, then when the person in the center is ready, they just say, "Hi, I'm Betsy." Very simple exercise. These so many people were in tears by the end of it, because it made you take up space, and and having eye contact with somebody for a couple of minutes
In
is
silence.
in silence is incredibly intimate and vulnerable. Like you feel naked. Like it's odd, but you feel very exposed.
Yeah.
And then you had to go to each, and then you say, "Hi, I'm Betsy." And then you do a couple more breaths together in sync. And then when you're ready, you're in the center, you move to the next person and you go around the whole circle. And then the next person does it. And it took about an hour and a half for everybody to go through. But you left that exercise and you had not said anything except for your name, that you knew these people better than most of your friends. It was unbelievable. Just I don't know, it's hard to explain.
No,
The intimacy that is created with just something as simple as that, and how much we're lacking that in our culture.
Yeah. It kind of made me think of people feeling seen for the first time. I wonder how many people are in these sessions in which they may have never had that much eye contact with someone because there was shame that was built in. There was something, in their life that they weren't ready to be that vulnerable. I can imagine what that might feel like. And then how do you feel like when you leave a session like that? Like, what does that feel like? Do you feel like a new person? Do you feel cleansed?
Yeah. I mean, like I've run marathons before. I felt like I had run an ultramarathon. Wow. I was so physically exhausted. I mean, it felt physically exhausted, but just emotionally spent after a day of all like exercises like that all day long. But yeah, I mean, I was on a high that I've never felt. And probably because you're right. I mean, you're seen, but also for me, so like where I live, like people know me when I go somewhere. So they know me and they already have, I don't know, it's just hard to explain, but
like a preconceived idea of who you are.
Yeah. They have a preconceived idea of who I am, which is fine. And it's honestly usually good. So that's okay. But it's like, they know me for my success in my businesses, but they don't know me. This group of people didn't know me from Adam. And then for me to be able to take up space just for nothing other than me being a human.
Yeah.
And not relying on my accomplishments to have value. That was huge for me.
Yeah. No, I would imagine that would be very big for a lot of people because, again, like you said, most people are defined by these boxes, whether they want to or not.
Yeah.
You're kind of just placed in these things. And now, like, someone sees you just as a person. There's a vulnerability there too for those of us that grew up trying to impress other people and trying to be something to everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I don't have to be anyone.
Right.
I could just be me. That sounds amazing. I don't know how I would handle that, but I think it's a beautiful
2-hour
thing.
workshops. I went all in and did the full day, but they have 2-hour workshops.
Yeah. Well, 2 hours sounds like a lot too. No, but I think there's a big gap in my mind of how someone that can be like me checking these boxes for so long then dives in the deep end to really find that little 4-year-old girl with her arms open wide of like, remember her? Like, I mean, she's waiting for a hug, right? Like she's excited. Now you're going back and trying to find that hug to bring her back to change your life. How does, and also too, you were already doing what 90% of the things you're doing now as far as jobs go, right? At that time?
Yeah.
And so now how do you work through all those spaces with more joy now and loving the things you do and not feeling that unhappiness that you had while you were still doing most of that same stuff before? Like, how does that change?
Well, I do feel like I mean, it's like I had almost like dirty sunglasses on.
Okay.
And now it's just clear. So it's the same environment, but my perspective is so different and joyful. And I see the beauty in myself and in other people, whereas before, if things would annoy me or frustrate me, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's almost like I'm, and not in a passive way, because I'm not a passive person, but more that I'm much more of an observer of what's going on, and not, and I was never a big reactor, but things would upset me before. And now it's more like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what wonder what lesson I could learn there, versus, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. Why is this person acting this way? You know,
Were you a fixer before too?
a big fixer. Yeah.
Okay.
Big
So now
fixer.
it's more curiosity of like, what can I learn? I don't need to fix this right away. I might
Yeah.
have to fix it at some point, but
Yeah.
I'll get to it.
Yeah. And like, let's see how this plays out.
More
You know,
patience, maybe?
more patience, so much less stress.
Do you make different business decisions because of all this?
I do. Yes, I absolutely think so. I think I give people more rope, to, it's like, well, they can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
May not be the way, and that's kind of how I raised my children. I did raise my children that way. Like, they'll figure it out. May not be the way I would have done it, but good, kudos to them. They figured it out in a different way. So yeah, I think I do. I'm more hands off.
Yeah.
In a good way for them, probably.
Probably for you too.
Yeah.
Well, seemingly for you,
Yeah.
if you're finding that joy. No, I think it's interesting. And the reason I ask all these questions about like how life on the outside probably looked very similar to
Mhm.
it does, like that
Mhm.
person that passes you at Publix
Yeah.
would have saw you as this, maybe a bigger smile on your face now, but they would define you the same way as far as if they were just looking externally.
Mhm.
These are the jobs you have. These are the things you do. They
Mhm.
don't know you from Adam. But
Mhm.
so many people that I talk to of these like internal perspective shifts and life shift moments in this way,
Mhm.
like completely pivot their lives to like, I'm going to become like a sailor. And I, like I used to be a stockbroker and now I'm going to be a sailor. But your life on paper
Mhm.
didn't change too much. It was
Right.
more you finding ways to find joy again or for
Mhm.
the first time in all the things you were already doing,
Mhm.
plus the new nonprofit.
Mhm. Yeah, the nonprofit came about 5 years ago. I love that. My goal in life is to improve and empower the lives of others, and that just fits right into my goal, because we're serving a segment of the population that doesn't usually use our services, and we're helping them find homes. So that's just wonderful, and build homes. They build the homes alongside us. We partner with Habitat for Humanity. It's a hand up, not a hand out, which is, that's my whole, like, I love that motto.
Yeah.
So that's been really nice.
Was that on your list before your seeking of joy and breaking the boxes?
So one of my core values in my company has been like, my core values are my company's core values. So the core value has always been service.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 5 years ago, we changed it, because for me, it really was about impact. Why do service if you're not making an impact? So we said, no, we're going to really funnel our efforts, and the value changed to impact. And we focused, most of our efforts now are in our space, real estate space and housing. And so that focus has shifted a little bit, just to make
Mm-hmm.
it more impactful, instead of doing little things and not having a major impact in any one area. We're really tightly focused now on where that impact is being made.
And feel free to tell me that I'm being dumb and I'm just making assumptions here, because this is what I do here on the show. But, like it feels like maybe before this kind of mind perspective shift, the service was a little bit more checklisty of like, you're doing it.
It was,
And now it's more like, I don't
right,
know, heartfelt.
right there, and there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Before we do, I mean, I've always loved to give back,
Right.
but there was really no strategy behind it. There was no
Mm-hmm.
plan. It was just like, oh, that sounds good. Oh, that sounds
We
good.
should do this. Yeah.
Right. There wasn't any bigger plan.
Because
Now,
I think there's a lot of organizations out there that have a service value as one of their their core pillars, if you will, but a lot of them are just like lip service in a way of like, oh, there's the things they do are very helpful, of course, but it's just find me something out here in the community that we can do, and not as
right,
focused in as you're doing now.
yeah.
Have you ever read a book called The Noticer?
No, and I read a lot.
I think it's by Andy Andrews. It's a little bit, I don't know if it's spiritual or not. I don't know. I'm not very religious or anything like that, but I read this book And a lot of it reminds me of your story, in a sense of, it's really about this guy who's kind of going through life, just seeing kind of the meh on the side, like just doing his thing and seeing things in a negative way. Not saying that you were doing that. I don't mean that.
Mm-hmm.
But another one comes in his life and is like, you should look at it from this angle. And life. And something about that, I sent it to like everyone I knew at the time when I read it. And it really just changed my mind about how, like, sometimes we're looking at things, but we're not seeing the proper side of it. Like if we just shift our perspective just a little bit, everything is different. And it's kind of like your service. You just like turn the box a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world of like, oh, this is how it actually fits. It's kind of like that. I'm sure you remember this game, Perfection.
Oh yeah, I loved it. That was one of my favorite games. And Super Perfection.
It stressed me out. But it's kind of like you got to turn the thing so that the moon fits in the proper way. And sometimes maybe that's just how life is. We got to look at it from different sides.
Yeah.
I mean, good on you for finding this part of your journey, because I bet it makes life feel more fulfilling.
Very, very much so.
Does the word success fit in your world? I know failure doesn't quite, but does success?
Yeah. Success for me now is really, did my presence positively impact somebody today? And that's it. I mean, at the end of the day, I asked myself that question, and that was a successful day, if I can say yes to that question.
Do you say no to that ever?
Occasionally.
Okay.
And those are usually days where I don't see anybody. Like I work from home. I mean, sometimes I work from home. If I work from home and I don't interact with anybody other than like through email, there will be a day where it's like, oh, I don't feel like I really did positively impact somebody.
I guess my question comes from, I think there are some people that might see or hear a story like this where like, I'm seeking joy, I'm going to be happy and all these things. You're not happy all the time, right? Like you probably have bad days and you get angry and you have all that, those emotions on that wheel that you showed me. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't get angry. It's odd. I don't get angry a lot.
Check that one off.
But I mean, but yes, I mean, I'm not on the good ship lollipop every day. No, but I am very aware. I mean, every day, at least once a day, the thought goes through my mind, and not in a morbid way. The thought is, Betsy, this could very well be your last day here. And that really shifts my perspective and makes pretty much everything totally fine. Because when I know that is the alternative, and I mean, we just had an agent that used to work for us passed away unexpectedly last week. So I'm constantly reminded that this truly could be my last day here. And then it's like, gosh, I've got it pretty good. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it is about perspective. And a lot of that question really stems from my own curiosity, and like part of my journey, definitely not happy all the time, but part of my journey is, or has been, once I was able to grieve my mom properly. I say I failed for 20 years and then I did it properly. And then my grandmother got sick, who I got really close to after my mom died. And I grieved properly, losing her, sat with her last 96 hours, did all these things that I felt right. But what I learned in that journey about myself is so much of my existence on this earth, for me to be happy in the world, is to acknowledge how I'm feeling at any moment in time. And so that I wasn't allowed to do that when I was a kid. In my mind, I was only allowed to be happy. Like I couldn't be anything else. But now if I have a bad day, I say that's okay. Like, like I'm having a bad day. This is not forever. This is a moment in time, kind of like this fleeting feeling. But like what helps me is the acknowledgement of that. And so that's kind of where that question came from. I'm like, are you happy all the time? Because I know that I'm living in more joy and I'm doing the things that serve me in a way that make me happy and is not necessarily checking a box for someone else to be impressed. But I also know that there are days where I'm just like this, like my eye twitching, like what, so that was where that question came from. So
Interesting. Yeah.
hopefully that wasn't offensive in
Oh,
any way.
no.
Yeah. What do you tell people? Like, if people are like, man, you're so different, like, do people say that to you? Do they notice a difference in you? Do your daughters notice a difference in you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we've talked about that, so I don't know.
Yeah. So you like, how are your relationships different from this? Like
my relationships, yeah. So over the last, I mean, I've always been somewhat, but I'm very, very intentional about how I spend my time and who I spend it with. And I really only have truly authentic relationships and friendships, which means I don't have a lot of people, which it was fine with me. That doesn't bother me at all. Right. But the people in my life, I truly feel like they get me, the real me, and they support that in my good days and my bad days. And so I love that. So that has changed immensely. And I can tell them and talk about my feelings and what's going on. And I don't fear being judged or, anything but love and support. So that's been huge. And my relationships, in terms of my daughters, I should say that I do feel like they're more honest and open about how we're feeling. So if I've said something or done something that upsets them, they have no problem telling me.
That's great.
And it's not like we're not talking. We're actually, that brings us closer because we've been able to share and connect and be authentic with each other.
Imagine doing that as a kid.
I wouldn't
know how.
It
wasn't a time period. The time period was different.
Right.
I love that for your daughters, though. I think that's so wonderful. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of your friends as you were describing your friend group. Could you do that circle, that bioenergy circle with them?
Yes, we could.
You could do it?
We could, yeah. Yeah.
I would say that's like the true sign of like someone that knows you.
Yeah.
And that you would feel comfortable doing, because come with a little extra strings when they're already your friends.
Right. Exactly.
So you have there's a whole other experience, I bet.
Yeah.
No, I think it's wonderful. What made you want to write the book? Is it just to like help other people, or was it more?
No, it was totally, if I could help one person. When I started sharing my stories of confinement, people resonated with those stories.
Yeah.
And saw boxes that they were in that they hadn't realized they were in. And I thought, if I could just change one person's life, it would have been worth the effort. And I mean, from the feedback, people have reached out to me and have said, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize all the boxes that exist. This has been eye-opening for me. I'm looking at things in a new way. Yeah. So it's having the impact that, I really wanted it to have.
Was it cathartic for you?
Very, very cathartic.
Yeah. Did you discover anything or uncover anything that you were like, oh, I didn't realize that until I started putting it to paper?
Probably just how much of my existence was in boxes, and a lot of it just how I was just operating on fear-based, making my decisions based on fear. That was upsetting.
Yeah.
But
I guess with the new joy in your heart too, you probably see those differently than if you had written it 10 years ago.
Right. I don't know that I would have even had nearly the insights that I have today.
Yeah. You might have been more mad about those boxes at the time. Yeah. And now you can see them as like learning experiences, or like, what can I get from that?
Right. And I'm not the victim. I put myself in boxes. I put other people in boxes. Sometimes I still do. So I'm not at all. And maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I would have been more of a victim.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting when you like snap into this awareness of something and then you start seeing it everywhere, and you're like, oh, that box too, or oh, so-and-so thought I was this and I'm not. And then you just start seeing it everywhere. So I can imagine how unpacking that felt like. But, you're doing the right thing, putting your story out there. It all goes back to story. I mean, however we package it up, whether it's in a book, a podcast, you're talking to someone on a park bench.
Exactly.
Like, these are the things that we needed when we were kids, when we were growing up, to know that like, oh, there's a different way that we can do this. We don't have to check all the boxes or jump in the boxes or do anything like that.
Or stay in them.
Well, you said it came out in...
it came out September 23rd.
Awesome. That's so awesome. And does it feel like a weight has been lifted now that it's out in public, or do you feel energized to do another one? What's
energized.
the journey? Okay.
Energized to do another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what you
Yeah.
might do the next time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working on that.
Yeah.
How long did the first one take?
You know, it was in my head for years.
Yeah.
And then when I actually sat down and said, okay, Betsy, we're going to do it, it took a full year. I wrote an hour a day, 5 days a week. That got me a page a day, 10 pages every other week. And then it took me, and it doesn't have to take this long. That part did take me that long if I wanted to keep my other businesses running.
Right.
But then, so I finished it a year ago today. I mean, a year ago, October. And then it took another year to get it out. But that piece could have been truncated. It was just my schedules and my publisher's schedules and vacations and things that went on that made it long. But yeah, I mean, it would take me another year, I think, to write a book. It just,
Yeah. Well, you don't want to rush things like that. I think it's important to get the right things in there.
Yeah.
What if this version of you could go back to the Betsy that was sitting on that 3-legged stool and 2 pegs came falling off? What would you say to her?
It'll be okay.
Would you believe it?
My mindset at the time, no. But now I do believe, I mean, anything that hits me in a split second, I go there.
Yeah.
Like I do know, and I'm confident and 100% sure. Not only is it going to be okay, it's actually it's happening for me, not to me. And something better will result because of this.
Yeah. It shows you the power of the human spirit too, because there are some moments that we're like, I'm not sure that I can make it through this, right? And look at you now. And you look back at that version of you, not that you were helpless or anything like that, but it was a dire situation in which you weren't used to.
Yeah.
You know, and then you also had these little kids and you had all this stuff to take care of, and you've done that and more. Now you have grown adult daughters that are telling you their feelings. Like that's a win in itself.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's something about the parent-child bond. If you can crack that down and be totally honest and vulnerable, I think you win. You know, well, thank you for sharing your story in this way. It's just, and thank you for letting me ask these questions and
my pleasure.
Pushing in ways that maybe sounded rude to people that are listening. So I hope they didn't.
Not at all.
If people want to check out your book or get in your circle or find you on social, what's the best way to get in your space?
So my website is my name, betsypepine.com. The book is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, any major book retailer. And
is it on your website too?
It's on my website.
Okay.
And then social handle is my name. And it's Betsy Pepine on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Wow. You're all over the place.
I try.
Should we say hi to Lauren and Brittany as well?
Yes,
hello,
yes.
Lauren and Brittany. Lauren has been on the podcast as well.
Nice.
So she shared her story and she's lovely. So Lauren, if you're listening, thank you.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for being a part of the Life Shift podcast and helping to change lives. We don't know who's listening right now, but if you're that person that's listening right now and something that Betsy said stuck with you, please reach out to her and let her know how that impacted you. Or maybe you have someone in your life that might need to hear this story. Maybe they're in a situation where this 3-legged stool, the pieces are falling apart and their life feels a little bit untenable at the moment. Share this episode with them. I think we would really appreciate that. So, and thank you for listening. And I will be back next week with a brand new episode. Thanks again, Betsy.
Thank you.